clarify the powers of the Attorney General to enter into contingency fee legal arrangements or contracts with attorneys outside the Attorney General's office. And House Bill 4031, requiring agencies to respond to public comments received during the rule-making process. You'll see committee chairs stand up and give an explanation of what this bill does and any floor debate that ensues. On second reading, House Bill 2147 to require the circuit courts, when appointing counsel for alleged protected persons, to make appointments from a listing of all interested and qualified attorneys in the circuit and on a rotating basis. House Bill 2584 to allow a judge to excuse a potential juror from jury duty until a later date based on seasonal employment. House Bill 2588 to require campaign financial disclosure forms to be filed with the Secretary of State electronically. Committees claiming hardship can request an exemption and file financial disclosures by certified mail. House Bill 2796 to provide that certain state employees may be granted a leave of absence with pay while providing assistance as an essential member of an emergency aid provider during a declared state of emergency. Good timing on that bill on second reading after the snowstorm this weekend. Also on second reading today, House Bill 2800 to exempt contact information of law enforcement officers and their family members from the Freedom of Information Act. Also on second reading, House Bill 4038 to permit the early refill of topical eye medications. And the House is underway.
House will be in order. All those not having privileges to the floor will please vacate the chamber. Members and guests will please rise as we are led in prayer today by the gentleman from the 32nd District, Delegate Pass.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we call upon you this day, humbly asking for your guidance, asking for your grace, asking for your help. For Lord, if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without your notice, how, God, can we try to build an empire of the state of West Virginia without your providential aid? Father, we humbly call upon you now for your aid, for your help. God, we pray for a spirit of unity. For those who labor without your aid, God, simply labor in vain. Help us, Lord, not to do that. We open our hearts up to you. We open up our minds to you. We acknowledge that you are the director of the affairs of mankind. We pray, God, for your help this day, this week, upon this capital, upon this state. It's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the gentleman from the 55th District, Delegate Spinato.
Will the members and our guests in the galleries please join us in saying Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reading the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Friday, January 23rd, 2016.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 4th, Delegate Evans.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
Gentleman from the 4th asks unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Journal will be approved as having been read. Gentleman from the 58th.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a citation presentation honoring Homeschool Day at the Legislature. To accept the citation, we have homeschoolers from across the state of West Virginia. Escorting our honored guests are delegates O'Neill, Kirchaba, Moffitt, Ellington, Azinger, Boggs, Perry, Moy, Fast, and Espinoza.
Clerk will please read a citation.
Whereas the state of West Virginia is committed to excellence in education, and whereas the state of West Virginia recognizes that parental involvement and individualized attention to educational success are unique and basic components of homeschooling, and whereas homeschooled students exhibit self-confidence and good citizenship and are prepared academically to meet the challenges of today's society, and whereas contemporary studies continue to confirm that children who are educated at home score exceptionally well on national achievement tests and score above the national average on SAT and ACT tests, and whereas homeschooled students have shown to be competitive with publicly and privately schooled students at college level, and whereas the House of Delegates recognizes students, teachers, and families involved with homeschooling in West Virginia for their dedication to excellence in education. Therefore, the House of Delegates of the West Virginia Legislature hereby applauds homeschooled students and hereby directs this citation be presented.
Members, be at ease for a moment while I present the citation. Members will please escort our guests from the floor. Gentleman from the 58th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a citation presentation honoring the George Washington High School volleyball team. To accept the citation today, we have the championship team and coaches. Escorting our honored guests are Chairman Eric Nelson, Delegates Stansberry, McCuskey, and Byrd.
Clerk, please read a citation.
Whereas the George Washington High School Patriots girls volleyball team secured their 6th state championship with a season record of 65-1-1, and whereas the team captured other championships, including the MSAC Championship, Region 3 Section 1 champions, Region 3 champions, and won 6 tournament championships, and whereas this was the 11th year as head coach for Missy Smith, and whereas Lily Jacobs, Ashley McClung, and Tessa Winner were selected to the all-tournament team, and whereas Hannah Jones and Tessa Winner were selected as first team members of the AAA All-State team. And whereas Tessa Winter was named West Virginia Gatorade Player of the Year. And whereas the team members and coaches of the George Washington High School Patriots girls volleyball team are as follows. Players: Hayden Cook, Liddy Elmore, Delaney Ellis, Malika Houston, Lily Jacobs, Hannah Jones, Lauren Jones, Ashley McClung, Narasa Medley, Maddie Sayre, Sydney Whitlock, Tessa Winter. Coaches: Missy Smith, head coach, Dan Shreve, assistant coach, Tom Raker, assistant coach, Casey Robinson, manager. The House of Delegates of the West Virginia Legislature congratulates each team member and the coaches of the George Washington High School Patriots girls volleyball team and hereby directs this citation be presented in their honor.
Members and guests, please be at ease a moment while I present the citation.
Snuck another delegate in on. Alright, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Have a look here. One more. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Great.
Members, please escort our Islander guests from the floor. Introduction of guests. Jump from the 29th, Delegate Moy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Bates and myself, we are pleased to have with us paging today from Hollywood Elementary, Regan Patton. And I think she's in the back right now. If she were out here, I'd ask her to raise her hand. But she is escorted today by her father, Kevin Patton. And if he's in the gallery, I think he is, he could stand and wave. And will the House please make them welcome?
Gentleman from 36, Delegate White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Paging for me today in Delegates Rowe and Delegates Guthrie's, we have Audrey Allred, a student from St. Agnes Elementary School. Audrey is also the daughter of the legislative manager, Aaron Allred, and Ashley Summit. So anyways, give her a big hand.
Gentleman from the 28th, Delegate Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Paging for us today is Joseph Payton from, I'll call it Friesland Mountain. For some of you that may not know, he's one of our homeschool students. He's a 10th grader, and he was brought down here today by his mom and dad, Lieutenant Colonel Leslie Payton, sitting up in the West Gallery. If you would stand, Mr. Payton. And his mother, Robin. They brought him all the way down from a snow-covered mountain just to be here today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from 36, Delegate Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a page from Hernshaw today in our district, the delegates Guthrie and Brad White, and I'm happy to introduce a delightful young woman named Sydney Ray Victory McKinney. Her mother, Kelly, is in the West Gallery, and I'd ask that the members make them welcome.
Gentleman from 35th, Delegate Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have paging with us Allison Mills and Emma Stowers, and their parents today are Mario and Julie Stowers and Aaron and Jeannie Mills. So myself and Delegate Stansberry, McCuskey, and Nelson, we welcome them to the House, and we ask that everybody please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from 28th, Delegate O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Visiting with us today as pages, we have from Raleigh County, from the town of Gent, Mr. Robert Rakes and Thomas Rakes. I would appreciate if they would stand. They're here today with their parents. I would ask the House to please make them welcome.
Gentleman from the 34th, Delegate Boggs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Along with the gentleman from the 33rd, we're very happy to have with us today in the South Gallery, and if they would stand when I call their name, please, homeschoolers Tim and Marissa Frame and Megan and Mariah Frame, also Katerina Pulaski, and also Lance and Lueska Linden and their kids, and also Wendy and James Summers. We also have Paul and John Summers, their sons that are paging here today. And also from Gilmer County, we have David and Donna Goff and Megan and Brianna, that are homeschoolers. And also, not to leave anyone out, my lovely wife Jean, if she would stand and the members would make them all welcome.
Lady from the 31st, Delegate Arbonne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have in the back gallery some friends here today. Just found out they were here with us for Homeschool Day. We have Autumn Halsey Davis and her girls Addison and Noelle, if they would stand, and Tiffany Bowles and her daughter Riley Bowles. And I'd like to welcome them here today and ask everyone to give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 58th, Delegate Coles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been joined by our Doctor of the Day in the back of the chamber. With us today, we have Dr. Elizabeth Yeager of Huntington. If the House will please make the good doctor welcome.
Further introductions. Reports of standing committees.
Committee on Energy has had under consideration House Bill 4102, Department of Environmental Protection, Oil and Gas, Rule relating to horizontal well development, and House Bill 4104, Rule relating to above-ground storage tanks, and reports the same back with amendment, with the recommendation that they each do pass as amended, that they be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Report be received and each bill be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee on Energy has had under consideration House Bill 4058, Rule relating to above-ground storage tank fee assessments, and House Bill 4059, Rule relating to above-ground storage tank administrative proceedings and civil penalty assessment, House Bill 4068, Rule relating to substance abuse screening standards and procedures, and House Bill 4103, Rule relating to requirements governing water quality standards. Reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass and that they be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Report be received and each bill be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Reports of select committees. Messages from the Executive. Messages from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate applies the Senate has passed Senate Bill 1, establishing West Virginia Workplace Freedom Act.
Report be received and the bill be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 22 by Delegates B. White, Miller, and others. Sergeant Gary Lee DeBoard Memorial Intersection.
Gentleman from the 58th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, and each resolution be formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committee as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The gentleman from 58th asks unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, that each resolution be considered formally introduced, referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Each resolution will be formally introduced and so referred. Petitions, motions, bills introduced.
House Bill 4244 by delegates Walters, Fritsch, and others, eliminating the need for a public hearing when no objection is filed on an application from an out-of-state chartered credit union to establish a branch in West Virginia.
Gentleman from 58th.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committee as listed on the chamber automation system.
The gentleman from the 58th asks unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, that each bill be considered formally introduced, referred to the appropriate committee as indicated on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Each bill will be considered formally introduced and so referred. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4002 relating to rulemaking under the State Administrative Procedures Act.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee substitute for House Bill 4002 represents an effort to bring some accountability to the regulatory process. If you'll recall, before the great storm of 2016, we talked about the amendments to this bill. Basically, those of you who've been here a while understand, to some extent, the rulemaking process. Those of you who are fairly new, let me just kind of give you a brief overview. Basically, from time to time when the legislature passes a bill, it gives the agency to which the responsibility for administering that bill the ability to make rules that will govern how that bill is enforced. If you think of it like an outline, the legislature basically gives the agency the broad outline, and the agency through the rulemaking process fills in the details. Kind of like a child's coloring book. You see the outline of the picture, and then the colors are filled in by the child. Well, similarly, the agency fills in the colors to how this statute is to be administered. Unfortunately, in giving the rulemaking ability to agencies, in the past there's been no effort to instill any type of effort to or system to review those rules from time to time to determine if they still fulfill the purpose that they were intended to, or if the cost that they incur outweighs any benefits that they produce. Over time, these rules have built up over many, many years, and now they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,800 rules on the books. Some of them are just a couple of pages, and some of them inches thick. What House Bill 4000, or Committee Substitute for House Bill 4002 does is basically require any new rules that are promulgated after the effective date of this statute, to have a sunset or termination provision of 5 years. Now, that doesn't mean that the bill will definitely terminate, or the rule will definitely terminate in 5 years. It's simply a time frame during which the agency has to determine whether the rule needs to continue, if there's a valid reason for it to continue, in which case it basically petitions, in a sense, or requests from our legislative rulemaking committee the ability to continue that rule for an additional period of time. Secondly, what the bill does is any rules that come up for modification that are existing rules at the time the bill is in place require, in addition to any other changes that the agency wishes to make, that a sunset provision be included at that time in the rule. It does not have to be 5 years. It can be 10, 15, whatever the agency determines is appropriate. But once again, the rulemaking committee approves that, and the legislature basically would have to approve that sunset provision. And finally, it encourages the rulemaking committee to develop a process by which it reviews not only those rules that are new rules that have sunset provisions, but existing rules to determine whether they are still needed, or if they're needed but some modifications are required. That's essentially the terms of this bill. Mr. Speaker, I recommend passage.
Are there other members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, could you please review for us what was in effect before we passed rulemaking review? I think it's the greatest thing this legislature ever did. And what I know before we didn't have rulemaking. Could you tell the members what that procedure was then?
The gentleman from the 10th asked the gentleman 27th to yield. The gentleman yield.
I'll definitely yield, but to the gentleman from the 10th, your tenure extends well beyond mine. And I don't think I was here before rulemaking was incorporated.
I was here.
So I will ask if you will yield for a question.
Well, let me help you.
Please, I need all the help I can get.
It's my opinion that before rulemaking, all these state agencies, if we passed a bill, had to do was hold public hearings, and after that was over, they put the rules in effect in the way they wanted them, and we had no control over that. And I think that's why it was a great thing we did. Excuse me for making a speech, but you know, and if Congress had something like this, we wouldn't have the public with the EPA and so forth that we have. I believe we might be the only state that actually has rulemaking. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I think what we're doing here today, or what we're proposing to do, is even a better step. It improves the process that you described.
Are there further members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman from 37th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman continue to yield?
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
Yes. I appreciate you explaining this for those of us who haven't been here nearly as long as the gentleman from the 10th. I'm new here, and I'm just trying to understand why exactly we're doing this. Now, currently, does the statute allow the Legislative Rulemaking Review Committee to review any procedural rule, interpretive rule, existing legislative rule? That's what we're operating under now. That's the statute right now, right?
To the gentleman, yes. That section was amended last session. It does give the rulemaking committee the ability to review, but as a practical matter, the volume of rules that come to them annually, it's difficult. They already work several days longer than we do during interims. It was felt that a better process would be new rules would require an automatic review in the context of the 5-year sunset provision.
Thank you. And there's no fiscal note attached to this?
No, there's no fiscal note.
Okay. Thank you. Would the chair of the Legislative Rulemaking Review Committee yield?
Does the lady yield? Lady yields.
So as we're currently operating, the statute that we're currently operating under, it's 29A 316, the Legislative Rulemaking Committee could sunset any rule that it wants right now. Is that correct?
It can, but I think that this gives a second layer of protection for the process. And just for instance, I was going to wait till the remarks in favor of this legislation, but I can probably answer your question with the remarks I was going to make. The new co-chairs, myself and Senator Maynard from Wayne County, we got together and we sent a letter to all of the state agencies that have rulemaking authority. And we said, would you go back and look at your rules and see what may not be necessary to protect the public, maybe something that was passed 40, 50 years ago that may not be necessary today. And we got back 100 responses from a number of agencies. Not all had responded, but of the ones that responded, there were 100 rules that they said were obsolete to today's standards. And so we will, in the future, will look at those and look at repealing those. I think that if you go into my office and if you pull out my filing cabinet that has the rules for this year that we're considering only from this year, you can stack them up to be this tall, up to over my waist in regulation, and that happens every year. Every year we have regulation that comes from different agencies that adds additional regulation to the citizens of West Virginia year upon year upon year. And I am glad that we finally have a process in place that we're going to have another layer, another opportunity set in statute, not just at the whim of a chairman or co-chairman, to ask the agencies to respond. So this will give another layer of protection for the people so that they will no longer have to be overburdened with unnecessary regulation.
Okay, so this is something that we do regularly. The legislative, currently the Legislative Rulemaking Review Committee goes through these rules regularly to eliminate obsolete
Well, this
rules.
is a new process,
I
and
understand that.
we have taken it upon ourselves just in our desire as co-chairman, but this will give the ability to put it into code because who knows who's going to be in this position into the future. And I think that this is a positive thing for the people of West Virginia. And the appropriate time, Mr. Speaker, I would urge adoption of this legislation.
At the appropriate time, I'd like to speak to the bill.
Gentleman may proceed.
Oh, thank you. Just briefly, I know I'm new here, but it appears to me that we're putting into code something we could already be doing. Maybe just to give the appearance that we're doing something that we're already supposed to be doing, it seems duplicative to me, and in my opinion, will wind up costing the state more money by creating more work for the staff members in this building and in other agencies to automatically have to re-review every single rule instead of us doing our job here with the Legislative Rulemaking Review Committee and picking out the rules that need to be reviewed, the ones that need to be sunsetted. So I'm going to oppose this bill.
Gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Manchin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentlelady who's the chairwoman of Legislative Rules
Lady from the
yield?
18th. Lady from the 18th yield. Lady yields.
I will. Thank you.
I guess I'm a little perplexed about the logic because if I understand correctly, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, the reason why we have rules is because we pass statutes and authorize rulemaking. Is that right?
That can be the case, but in other cases, it could be that the legislature maybe 20 years ago gave an agency the authority to promulgate a rule, and they keep coming back and adding more.
Well,
but it does come back to the legislature for approval. You are correct.
In either of those instances, we've asked we have ducked the hard work of laying out all the particulars of how to carry out a piece of legislation and asked them, come back to us and tell us how you want to propose to do what we haven't spelled out in ABCs. Isn't that essentially where rulemaking comes from?
That could be how it happened in the past, but as we move forward with our new leadership, we're wanting to have a different process in place for basically being able to have a sunset provision in these rules because they may not be applicable to today's standards. So this is just another opportunity for us as we move forward. Now that may be the past standard or the past practice, but moving forward, this is how we would like to proceed.
Now we do have the ability, though, to go back and draft legislation to deal with any legislative rule that we think is outdated and unnecessary, don't we?
Well, that can happen as well, but I think this is a better process, and I do support it.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out, why would we treat these on an ongoing basis, a forward-going basis, any differently than we treat any other piece of legislation? Why wouldn't we sunset every piece of legislation now? Because they're just the same as rules, because we've passed the rules, we've looked at the rules, they've gone through your committee, they've gone through a major committee before they're approved by this body. How are they any different than all the other pieces of legislation that we pass?
That's a question, how they're different?
Pardon?
You're asking me how they're different?
Yeah,
how laws are different
how are they any
than
different?
rules?
I mean, if they run through our committees and they're examined by your committee and then they go to a major committee, how are they any different than any other piece of legislation that we pass? And if they're not any different, why don't we just adopt that rule of sunsetting everything?
Well, I think that rules are a little different. Even though they have the same effect as law, they sit there. They are the average public. If a member of the average public wanted to actually see what legislation we pass, they have a better opportunity to try to find that in the state code. If you have to go through all the rules of all the agencies that have been passed and filed with the Secretary of State, it's a little bit more convoluted. Because when you have maybe a 2-page bill that we pass and we put into motion and it becomes part of state code, then there may be a 200-page rule that is attached to that. and it's a little bit more convoluted and hard for the public
Now,
to
just,
delve through.
Just to be clear, just as we have the West Virginia State Code that's available online and otherwise to our public, we also have the Code of State Regulations, and that's where all of these rules are published and made available for the public. Is that right?
It is made available to the public.
So for any particular area, they have the ability to go in and look at those CSRs and determine whatever it is that we've passed and whatever the state rules are, correct?
That may be correct.
All right.
But if you want to vote for it, you can, and if you don't, you don't have to.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for your information, when this rulemaking bill was passed by this legislature, it was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court because it hadn't had legislative review. So Joe Albright, a very liberal and the smart speaker, took care of that. And so now we have these rules going before the legislature before they can be adopted. And I think that, Mr. Speaker, the people who serve on that rulemaking have more work to do than all the rest of us. And I congratulate them and thank them for all the hard work they do.
Lady from the 51st, Delegate Fritsch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to clarify what might be a little misconception that's been communicated today. Not all rules that come before our rulemaking and review committee are the result of a law that's gone through a major committee and been passed by this legislature. Agencies, boards, and commissions come to us with rules that they've promulgated. So those are rules that I and the chairman have seen and the other members, but these rules, like all rules, have been building up over years and years and years. So this body, the major committees, have not seen all of the rules. Not all rules are a result of laws that this body has passed. So I would just like to clear that up. Thank you.
Are there further members desiring to speak to the adoption of or the passage of the bill before I recognize the gentleman from the 27th to close debate? Gentleman from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to summarize, West Virginia has been categorized as one of the heaviest regulated states, if not the heaviest regulated states in the nation. And the accumulation of our rules through no sort of accountability or review process is part of the reason for that. And all this bill does is simply take a step in the direction of instilling a process going forward, as well as in the review process of rules that come up for review, to make sure we can weed out those rules that no longer make sense for the people of the state of West Virginia. The burden that's shifted to the agencies is a burden that they should welcome. It's the burden to take accountability and responsibility for what they oversee. And to put it in perspective, the Rulemaking Review Committee passes on about 70 to 80 rules a year. We have 1,800 rules. In order to pass on those 70 or 80 rules a year, they have to spend probably the equivalent of at least a week longer in interim meetings and long interim meetings just to cover those 70 or 80. And of those 70 or 80, probably at least 75% of them are existing rules that are just come up for a minor modification or to comply with some statute. So really we're only talking about maybe 15 to 25 new rules a year. And rather than imposing those rules on our committee to keep up with along with their other work, we're simply asking those agencies to basically create a tickler system that they review those rules within the 5-year sunset provision and let the Legislative Rule Review Committee know whether they need to be extended or not. Not a really heavy lift for them, and it's certainly appropriate. And Mr. Speaker, I recommend passage.
Question for the House is the passage of the bill. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine.
The following have paired in accordance with House Rule 43. Delegate Weld, yea. Delegate Schaefer, nay.
Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, 81 ayes, 16 nays, 3 members absent not voting. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk, please report the title.
House Bill 4002.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the title.
Questions? Passage of the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk, please report the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Further bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4007, relating generally to appointment of attorneys to assist the Attorney General.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 4007 would codify the process by which the Attorney General's office has hired outside or private attorneys in contingency fee matters on behalf of the state of West Virginia. In this bill, these private attorneys are referred to as Special Assistant Attorney Generals. The bill substantially mirrors the policy adopted and followed by the current Attorney General over the past 2 years in an effort to try to minimize the cost to the state and its agencies in hiring outside counsel. In particular, the bill prohibits a state entity or agency from entering into any contingency fee arrangement or contract with a private attorney unless the Attorney General makes a written determination of 2 factors. 1, it's cost effective, and 2, it's in the best interest of the public. If the Attorney General makes that determination, the hiring of a private attorney is appropriate. And the Attorney General then is required to request proposals from private attorneys to represent the state on a prescribed fee arrangement or another basis. The request for proposal must be posted on the Attorney General's website. And this bill further requires the Attorney General to make a written determination as to the award of the contract and sets forth 10 different factors that the Attorney General shall consider in making the award. If selected by the Attorney General, the private attorney must abide by additional requirements, including an established fee arrangement, which prohibits private attorneys to receive an aggregate fee in excess of 25% of the first $10 million. If a greater amount is recovered, the bill sets forth additional thresholds with diminishing percentages of allowable fee and sets a maximum fee of $50 million. In addition to the fee arrangement, the bill also includes a record retention policy for private attorneys and makes certain documents accessible through a FOIA request. Further, the bill was amended in committee, prohibiting members of a private law firm or members of their staff, which is under contract to provide legal services pursuant to this bill, from contributing to the election campaign for the office of Attorney General during the pendency of the contract, or for any election for the office of Attorney General occurring during the term of the contract. Finally, the bill makes clear that its provisions do not expand the authority of any state agency or state agent to enter into contracts, nor does it change any existing law that authorizes a state agency or state agent to employ its own counsel or to enter into contracts for legal services. Mr. Speaker, I recommend passage.
Are there further members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman from the 19th, Delegate Perdue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question of the chair.
Gentleman yield? Gentleman yields.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I note that in the bill, and I think I'm probably reading it too closely, it says the state may not enter into any contingency fee legal arrangement or contract with a private attorney unless the Attorney General or his designee makes a written determination. Does that mean, that the state, let's say the administration, can't enter into a legal arrangement or contract with a private attorney other than a contingency fee legal arrangement?
No, it doesn't. Just in those cases where a contingency fee contract is appropriate, it requires this process and these requirements be imposed upon that contract.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 17th, Delegate Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to request a Rule 49 at the appropriate time.
You're tuned to coverage of the West Virginia Legislature on the West Virginia Channel. We are currently in the West Virginia House of Delegates. Delegate Doug Reynolds has asked for a Rule 49 that requires going to the Speaker, the Chair, and explaining why he should be excused from voting for this particular bill. It's likely that he is an attorney and probably does business with the Attorney General's office. So he has gone to the podium to discuss this matter with the Speaker of the House. The bill currently up for debate on third reading is House Bill 4007, related generally to appointment of attorneys to assist the Attorney General.
To the gentleman from the 17th, based on the facts that he's explained, I know that the gentleman is a candidate for the Office of Attorney General, but I do not see a personal or pecuniary interest directly to you, and in the sense that this would be a prospective application to anyone who may hold the office or who may seek the office, then you would be, in that sense, a member of a class. Therefore, it would be the ruling of the chair that the gentleman should vote on the passage of the bill. Are there other members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill? The gentleman from the 27th wishes to close debate. If not, the question for the House is the passage of the bill. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine.
The following have paired in accordance with House Rule 43. Delegate Weld, yea. Delegate Schaefer, nay.
Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, 96 ayes, 1 nay, 3 members absent not voting. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk, please report the title.
House Bill 4007.
Are there amendments to the title? Not titles read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk, please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Further bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4031, requiring agencies to respond to public comments received during the rulemaking process.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 56th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to require agencies to respond to the public comments they received during the public comment period for the rulemaking process. To do this, the committee substitute adds language to the Administrative Procedures Act, which provides for a period of at least 5 days after the end of the public comment period to allow the agency to review and respond to any public comments received. The committee substitute then adds language that states that the Legislative Rulemaking Review Committee may review these responses, and if they believe that the agency's responses are inefficient or insufficient, the committee may then recommend that the legislature not authorize the rule. Additionally, language is added that specifically includes this review in the list of items that the committee must review before recommending authorization to the full legislature. I urge passage.
Are there other members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill? Not the question for the House is the passage of the bill. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine.
The following have paired in accordance with House Rule 43. Delegate Weld, yea. Delegate Schaefer, nay.
Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, 96 ayes, 1 nay, 3 members absent not voting, majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, that occur the bill pass. Clerk, please report the title.
House Bill 4031,
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Howe moves to amend the title.
Question for the House is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk, please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Bills on second reading.
House Bill 2147, requiring the Circuit Court, when appointing counsel for alleged protected persons, to make appointments from a listing of all interested and qualified attorneys in the circuit.
Are there amendments?
Committee on Judiciary moves to amend the bill. On page 1, section 7, line 7, after the word basis, by changing the period.
Gentleman from the 27th asked unanimously to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Gentleman from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a committee substitute or a committee amendment that was passed by our committee to House Bill 2147 to address a couple of issues that were raised during the committee's discussion. House Bill 2147 addresses the situation in which the Circuit Court is permitted to appoint counsel for alleged protected persons under the West Virginia Guardianship and Conservationship Act. The bill, as it was originally proposed, required the court to make appointments from a list of all interested and qualified attorneys in the circuit on a rotating basis. In other words, prior to this bill, the court could at its discretion appoint one or more over and over again to the exclusion of other attorneys who might otherwise be qualified. The bill ensures that the Circuit Court is aware of all attorneys who are interested in being appointed in guardian and conservator cases, and that the Circuit Court does not consistently appoint the same attorneys to all cases. The effect of the committee amendments are really two places. We permit in those circuits where there may not be an ample list of attorneys that want to qualify, it allows the court not only to appoint from its list within that circuit, but also, if there are none available, to appoint any competent counsel it deems proper, either within or without the circuit. And the other part of the amendment is to strike out the word the words "and qualified." So now it was felt that if you're a licensed attorney, you had already passed the bar and were otherwise qualified. So in some ways, that modifying language was redundant. So now it's just a matter of the court. All interested attorneys who wish to have this type of appointment would notify the court. The court would then keep the list and then appoint on a rotating base from that list. So the amendment basically seeks to allow some flexibility from the original bill to go outside the circuit if there are not ample or adequate number of attorneys available, and strikes out the two words "and qualified." Mr. Speaker, I urge adoption of the amendment.
Are there other members desiring to speak to the adoption of the amendment? Not the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? Not the bill be advanced to engrossment and third reading.
House Bill 2584, allowing a judge to excuse a potential juror from jury duty until a later date based on seasonal employment.
Are there amendments?
Committee on Judiciary moves to amend the bill.
The gentleman from the 38th asks unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Gentleman from 38.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, under current law, a prospective juror may be excused from jury service by the court upon a showing of undue hardship, extreme inconvenience, or public necessity. The committee amendment before us amends subsection C to state that a person that is engaged in seasonal employment may be excused from jury service on the basis of undue hardship, extreme inconvenience, or public necessity as well. The court will make the decision as to whether the prospective juror is engaged in seasonal employment and the duration of such seasonal employment. I would urge adoption of the committee amendment.
Gentleman from the 23rd, Delegate Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
The gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
A quick question, and you may be able to enlighten some of my ignorance. In the National Guard, pilots and people like that from time to time are referred to as guard bums, okay? So they're offered opportunities to come on orders for a day or two here and there. and that's how they make a lot of their income. There may already be military protections that I'm not aware of, and if there are, please enlighten me. But my question to you is, would this bill cover those folks as well?
It's my understanding that the specific language before us, the amendment, doesn't deal with that sort of a situation. I can certainly ask counsel if they know off the top of their head whether or not military service or the example that you've given would qualify as an exemption from jury service. This language is directed more at seasonal employment, such as somebody who's involved in lawn care, yard work, that type of thing, where the majority of their income comes from summer months, for example. That type of a situation. Okay. The counsel has just mentioned to me that she's not aware either of a specific code section that covers the example that you've given. However, public necessity may cover that, and ultimately it is left to the discretion of the judge. So I would suggest if there isn't a specific code provision that covers it, that a guard member might simply inform the court that is the circumstance of their situation, and then the judge, it would be within their discretion to excuse the guard member.
Okay. Do you think it would hurt the intent of the bill if there were a piece added to include members who may seasonally work for the military?
I don't know that it would specifically harm the bill that we have before us, although without having the title in front of me, I'm not sure whether it would fit within that, but I'm certain that we would work with you to cover that situation if it's not already covered.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from 63rd, Delegate Folk.
Gentleman, continue to yield.
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
Would it surprise you to know that I think there's some provisions in federal law to address this issue?
It would not surprise me, and I just, out of abundance of caution, because I'm not specifically aware, that was the way that I framed my answer.
All right, thank you.
The further members desiring to speak to the adoption of the amendment? Not the question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it to declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? Not the bill be advanced to engrossment and third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2588 relating to the filing of financial statements with the Secretary of State.
Are there amendments?
No.
Not the bill be advanced to engrossment and third reading.
House Bill 2796 providing paid leave for certain state officers and employees during a declared state of emergency.
Are there amendments? Not the bill be advanced to engrossment and third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2800 adding law enforcement officers' contact information and names of family members to the list of exemptions from public records requests.
Are there amendments? Not the bill be advanced to engrossment and third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4038 relating to insurance requirements for the refilling of topical eye medication.
Are there amendments? Not the bill be advanced to engrossment and third reading. Bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2130, including law enforcement officers among those professionals, the assault or battery of which leads to enhanced criminal penalties.
Bill be advanced.
House Bill 4005, repealing prevailing hourly rate of wages requirements.
Bill be advanced. Leaves of absence. Gentleman from the 58th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleagues, Delegate Fleischauer, Skinner, Longstreth, and Weld.
Without objection, leaves will be granted. Remarks by members of the House. Gentleman from the 20th, Delegate Markham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise today in regards to House Bill 4239. I left on your desk a letter from the Speaker of the Kentucky House today. If you all would turn to me and look at that, this is something that we've been working on for a couple of years. I've talked to the Speaker about it, talked to everyone involved with this bill here in our chambers. This runs through Mingo, McDowell, Mercer, Wyoming, all the southern counties in southern West Virginia. This will establish, well, this is the beginning project to establish a modern four-lane highway from the Mountain Parkway in Prestonsburg, Kentucky to Beckley, West Virginia. What this will do is it'll bring jobs to southern West Virginia. We've seen the decline in the coal industry due to the attacks from Obama and Washington. But here's one chance that we have to see Washington help us. Ladies and gentlemen, this letter from Greg Stumbo, the Speaker of the House in Kentucky, clearly tells you that Speaker John Boehner at the time, who's no longer the Speaker, we know, but we also have what I think is important, Hal Rogers. For many people that don't know that, Hal Rogers is the chairman of the Appropriations Committee in Congress. A very powerful position. We need money. Here's our chance. Here's our chance to get money to build this highway, to diversify the economy of southern West Virginia, to put laid-off coal miners back to work. Here's our chance, ladies and gentlemen. House Bill 4239, and you'll see the sponsors of that bill shows a very powerful message, in my opinion. It shows how we want this done. We want to see this happen. This bill has no physical note on it. This bill's simply asking the Department of Highways to develop a plan, map it out, show us what it's going to cost. Let's do our part. Let's run House Bill 4239 and do our part. Let's show the state of Kentucky and Hal Rogers and even Senator Rand Paul that we're serious about this highway. Ladies and gentlemen, I've worked on this bill for a while. I've been dealing with this for a couple years now, trying to get something to happen. Let's stir development in the coal fields of West Virginia, the southern part of the state. You know, we got to stop the north-south divide here in Charleston. And coal has powered this state for 80, 90, 100 years. It's time for you guys to help us when we're struggling. So I encourage everybody to help the coal industry, put coal miners back to work on this project. Let's get them where they're not moving out of state to find work. Let's put them back to work on this project. Real quick, we have also worked on this project with Senator Joe Manchin, Shelley Moore Capito. Both of them have issued support in this. We have support in Washington to get the funding. More importantly, Mitch McConnell's even come out in support of our plan. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a bipartisan effort to make West Virginia better, to open up the southern part of the state. So while Washington under Obama has destroyed the coal industry and put coal miners out of work, we have a chance here to help diversify, save our coal jobs, bring our coal miners back to West Virginia, and let's put them to work on this project. Again, Mr. Speaker, I ask that your leadership run this bill, and let's get to work and help with southern West Virginia. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Gentleman from the 22nd, Delegate Moffitt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As long as we're talking about infrastructure for the southern West Virginia, I rise today to address a huge infrastructure issue for our state, and especially southern West Virginia. Yes, we have road issues, water and sewer issues, but a major portion of what many of us take for granted is the information superhighway. Tomorrow is Broadband Day at the legislature. Our state ranks behind third world countries in internet speed. The internet is essential for students to do their homework, for companies to conduct business, for doctors to perform telemedicine, and for so many other reasons. SB 315 is being discussed in the Senate this week. It is a revenue-neutral bill and takes $0 from the general revenue. I hope that this second session of the 82nd legislature that we can come together and work on passing what we need for infrastructure to draw companies in and pass a bill that will be revenue-neutral for our state for the infrastructure. Thank you.
Further remarks by members. Gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On my way to the chambers today, I found some money. So if anybody from our body or the general public would like to see me after, I have your money that was lost.
Don't everybody stand in line. Further remarks by members. Gentleman from 35th, Delegate Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know many of us stayed in town this past weekend, and many others traveled the roads, but I think it's incumbent upon us to reach out and thank the Department of Highways, the National Guard, and others, because at least the roads that I saw around this area, wow, did they do a fabulous job. But please, if the body could give those guys a big welcome and a big thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Further remarks by members? Miscellaneous business. Gentleman from the 58th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Subject to announcements, I move the House adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Are there announcements? Gentleman from the 64th, Delegate Householder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Committee on Finance will meet this afternoon, beginning at 3 p.m. for the Department of Environmental Protection budget hearing, and again at 4 p.m. for the Department of Veterans Assistance budget hearing. Between the two budget hearings, the committee will take up legislation, and the agenda will be posted.
Gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Inquiry regarding the availability of the chamber for a public hearing on this Wednesday, January 27th, beginning at 8:30 a.m.
Chamber is available.
Ladies and gentlemen, there'll be a public hearing conducted by the Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, January 27th, beginning at 8:30 a.m. here in the chamber on House Bill 4145, relating to carry or use of a handgun or deadly weapon. And also, ladies and gentlemen, your Committee on the Judiciary will meet today at 3 p.m. in the House Committee on Judiciary Room. The agenda is posted.
Gentleman from 38, Delegate Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By way of announcement, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to announce that my two boys, Patrick and Alexander, have been paging with us today. And if everybody would please make them welcome, I'd appreciate it. They're the two down front that... Stand up, boys. They're the two that look as ornery as their father, so it's easy to pick them out.
Nobody could look that ornery. Gentleman from the 61st, Delegate Duke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet this afternoon at 3 p.m. in the Education Committee room. The agenda is posted.
Lady from the 31st, Delegate Arbonne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet today at 3 p.m., Monday, January 25th, in the Government Organization Committee Room, 215 East. The agenda is posted.
Lady from the 49th, Delegate Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet on Tuesday at 2 o'clock in room 215E. The Republican members will caucus at 1:30, and the agenda is posted.
Gentleman from the 53rd, Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Committee on Energy will meet tomorrow, Tuesday, January 26th at 2 p.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room, and the agenda will be posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Stansberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Select Committee on Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse will meet tomorrow at 4 o'clock in 215E, the Government Organization Room, and the Republican members of that group will caucus 15 minutes prior. Thank you.
Lady from the 18th, Delegate Sabonia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Industry and Labor will meet tomorrow, January 26th at 9 a.m. in the Government Organization Committee Room, and the agenda will be posted.
Gentleman from the 48th, Delegate Hamrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Roads and Transportation will meet today, Monday, January 25th at 4 p.m. in the Government Org Committee Room. The agenda is posted.
Gentleman from the 14th, Delegate Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Political Subdivisions will meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. in the House Education Committee room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman from the 42nd, Delegate Ambler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources will meet tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in the Government Organization Room. The agenda is posted.
Lady from the 16th, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A week from tomorrow is the Speaker's dinner. I would appreciate those of you who plan on attending to please come and tell me if you've got the money with you today. That's very helpful. If you do not, you can still make reservations and pay me before the dinner. It's going to be fun.
The gentleman from the 29th, Doug Moy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Without objection, I request that the remarks from the gentleman from the 20th be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection, remarks will be printed in the appendix of the journal. Lady from 43rd, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your minority members of your Health Committee will caucus on Tuesday at 1 p.m. in room 151A. That is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Democratic members will caucus for the Health Committee 151A.
Gentleman from the 58th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the benefit for the members, I was passed a note that many of you may have been expecting to visit with your county commissioners, but the County Commissioners Association meeting or reception scheduled for this evening from 6:30 to 8:30 has been canceled due to weather and will be rescheduled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further announcements. Jump from the 10th, Delegate Azinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a reminder, the prayer caucus will meet 5 minutes before each session right here in the vestibule. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further announcements. Not the question for the House is the motion by the gentleman from the 58th that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the House adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
3 bills passed on the floor today. They'll be reported to the Senate session tomorrow. There will be 6 bills up for passage tomorrow. House Bill 2147 to require circuit courts, when appointing counsel for alleged protected persons, make appointments from a listing of all interested and qualified attorneys. House Bill 2584 will be up for passage to allow a judge to excuse a potential juror from jury duty until a later date based on seasonal employment. House Bill 2588 to require campaign financial disclosure forms be filed with the Secretary of State's office electronically. And House Bill 2796 to provide that certain state employees may be granted a leave of absence with pay while providing assistance as an essential member of an emergency aid provider during a declared state of emergency. You heard the House Judiciary Chair call for a public hearing Wednesday morning at 8:30, January 27th, on House Bill 4145, carrying a deadly weapon. You will be able to watch this public hearing Wednesday morning at 8:30 here on the West Virginia Channel. This concludes today's broadcast of the West Virginia Legislature. We will be back tomorrow morning at 11 with more action from the floors of the State Senate and House of Delegates. This program reminder, the Legislature Today, our nightly broadcast of legislative news and information, airs at 6:30 and 11:30 every weeknight on West Virginia PBS. And here on the West Virginia Channel, the Legislature Today is repeated weeknights at 10 and weekday mornings at 6:30. Among Ashton Mara's guests for this evening's program, Adjutant General James Hoyer of the West Virginia National Guard to give us a status report on the condition of the state after the massive snowstorm this weekend. I'm Beth Voorhees for the West Virginia Channel, a service of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.